I'm Beth Schaefer. I'm the director of the Institute for Professional Development at Metro State University. And today I have with me Mark Waldof. This is his first time doing an Expert Insights webinar for IPD, but he's been an instructor training for us for over a year already. We've added Mark to our project management instructor lineup because of the high demand that we've had for project management training. And some of you may be familiar with Christine Moore. She was unable to accept all of the requests that we had for project management training. And so I am delighted that we have the need to add Mark to our training bench. I believe the demand for project management speaks to the usefulness of project management theory and how this isn't just a passing fad. I feel like it's hung around long enough now that there's some very useful tools in the theory. Mark is local, so those of you who are joining us from Minnesota, you can know that he is someone available to do project management training. There are advantages, I think, sometimes having a local Minnesotan teach project management training to other Minnesotans, because we do have our own kind of forms of communication and culture. And so Mark certainly has lived that and understands that. He comes with many, many years of project management experience and has worked across many industry sectors. So we're glad that he's here today to do resolving trouble project situations. And maybe some of you know that you were able to vote on your most troubling project situations, and we collected that data and sent it to Mark so that he can address those that received the highest votes. Depending on time, he may be able to address some of the write-in issues that people sent in as well. One of the questions you may be asking, well, if project management theory is so great, why do we have this topic today of resolving troubling project situations? And of course, there's one word for that, which is people. People are always the wild card. So that's, I haven't seen the presentation, so maybe I could be wrong, but that's what my instinct is telling me. For the seminar today, there's a Q&A box or the chat box. So Mark is interested in answering your questions in real time. So at any time you can submit a question to either of those. We are recording today's session. So if you submit to the Q&A session, you submit anonymously if you don't want to have, information appear from you, and I will respect you. I won't list you by name. So feel free to submit that way, and I will be keeping tabs on both those places and try to catch Mark in real time to answer any of your questions. The recording will get posted on our website. It usually takes us a couple weeks. Our communications person is part-time. But so if there's something in particular you want to go back and revisit, or you can share the link with a coworker to say like, oh my gosh, this was totally useful, do know that that will be available. But before we move on to Mark, we do need a word from our sponsor. And our sponsor today is the Institute for Professional Development. And in particular, we want to highlight our customized training. On our website, you can visit the customized training for the workplace tab, and you will see that there are categories there for the different types of training that we do. Each of those categories will suggest some courses, but it is customizable, so it's only a starting point. There's a couple of places where you can find project management. One is under project training. It's a general overview. And if you go to public sector, there's a box for project management training for public sector employees. And there it's broken down a little bit into more pieces. And do know that any of those pieces can be delivered to corporate as well. That's where we would customize. So with that, Mark, I am going to quit sharing so that you can share your screen and go ahead and get started on today's presentation.
All right, Beth, thank you kindly. And let me share our presentation here. So good afternoon, everyone. And looking forward to the discussion today. I'll tell you the fun part for me in giving courses and giving webinars is the question. So, please feel free to help us out with that. Handling difficult project situations. Beth did a nice job of identifying, the importance of these kind of topics. You can be a genius at all the nuts and bolts of setting up and planning and managing projects. But a lot of things pop up that, aren't in the textbook, so to speak, or in courses. One thing I've done in the past is I used to, and I've done a number of webinars, worldwide webinars for PMI. And there'd be a couple thousand people online, and then we would get questions. I got about, over about 10 or so webinars I did. I got about, I don't know, maybe like 1,000 questions. And a lot of those were very interesting because they were these kind of difficult project situations that, are, beyond the textbook kind of thing. So very important for all of us that manage projects, and for those of us in leadership roles that have project managers working for us. Very important that some of these difficult project situations be talked about. And, we give ideas to, the folks that are managing projects. So here's the topics we're going to quickly run through here. Stakeholders have conflicting interests. That's a big one. Here's an important one. I've been asked to take over a troubled project. What can I do? I've got about a 10-step process there on taking over a troubled project. There's some very important things to be done and not done as that starts. So we'll go through that. Customers or leadership keep changing their minds. Boy, they sure do. And they do it all the time. And sometimes that's necessary, and sometimes that's a challenge, and sometimes that can destroy a project. And so we'll talk about that. Inadequate project roles are causing confusion. Got a number of thoughts there, and I've got some resources. I do have a website. I'll be identifying that as I go through some of these topics. And I do have resources you can download for some of these topics. Limited resources on projects. Many organizations are running into that. And it's important for a project manager to be able to cope with that and work with leadership when that's needed. Stakeholders see technology as the answer to everything, I guess. Technology is very important. Technology is one part of a much larger set of dimensions of an infrastructure that an organization needs for the organization to be successful and for projects to be successful. So that'll be an important topic for us here. My own experience, Beth provided a great summary there. I just have one slide here. You can see I spent about 44 years in the Fortune 50, Fortune 100 world. Some of the things I was responsible for, you can see there. I've had a chance to work with a number of major organizations, U.S. government agencies, foreign governments, foreign military, work with some national labs. I had a chance to teach at St. Thomas in the grad school there for a while. University of Minnesota, I teach there, and of course for Metro State. Some of the local and non-local kind of consulting work that I've done, you can see some of the clients I've had. I'll tell you what I've learned from these encounters, these engagements, is that all projects are different because every project is going to do something different, but really all projects are the same. They need the same fundamentals. And actually the answer to a lot of these troubling and difficult project situations, a lot of that is in part, application of PM fundamentals. So we'll be certainly identifying that as we go. So let's dive right in here. Stakeholders have conflicting interests and are driving the project in different directions. Happens all the time. And there's some things that we can do proactively, which is real important as a project starts. And there's some things we can do reactively as we're in the project. So the proactive thing we're going to mention is going to be focusing on the project definition work up front. And then we're going to separate the reactive area into two parts. One would be, we've got some issues, but it's not really serious. Or during the project, we've got some stakeholder conflicts and it is serious. And maybe it's even a showstopper kind of situation. So let's look at each one of these. From a proactive viewpoint, and this is really where you want to put your focus, is when a project is getting started, a project needs a sound definition. It needs a sound project charter. Use whatever terms your organization likes there. So what's a project charter? It's only a couple pages in length. Could be 5, it could be 1. It's going to identify some of the key, and we'll look at these, some of the key things about the project. And it's something that's very important for all stakeholders on the project to maybe be a part of the preparation, but certainly review and comment. Because if we can get everyone on the same page at the start, chances are that we're not going to have much in the way of stakeholder conflict as we go through the project itself. So what would be some of the components of a charter? Lots of different charters there. You would choose a charter format that works for your projects and your organization. What you see here is kind of a heavy duty kind of set of topics, but these would be some of the things that would be key in a charter. Project need and importance. I like including information. If we're not successful as a team here, we're not successful in completing this project, what really is going to happen? And really, I'm not sure a lot of project managers and project teams focus on this, but a lot of projects are very critical to the mission and vision of an organization and serving their customers. And so understanding if the project fails, what had happened is a real key thing here for all parties to be aware of. Deliverable list, what's going to be done, what will be delivered at the end, included and excluded work scope, very important. Stakeholders and roles, we're going to talk more about that a little later. And you can see some of these others at the bottom aren't quite as important, but some of these things are very critical to everyone having a common understanding of what the project is. So what would you do? You want to put this together just as the project is starting. The PM could do this, maybe leadership will do this and give it to the PM. Many ways it can be done. If I've got project managers working for me, I'd be asking for all project managers to work with me to put together the charter, so we're heading in the right direction from the start. In either case, an initial draft would be put together. I'd want to socialize that draft as being not final. Here's our ideas. And if any stakeholders have any issues with the information in the project charter, project definition, we want to get those out on the table right at the start so that we can resolve those and save us some real time and turmoil later on. If it turns out we can't get that charter agreed upon, I'm going to use project sponsor or leadership, may be asked to assist with that. But you really don't want to do a whole bunch of work on a project until the real important folks, the key stakeholders here, do agree and have a common understanding of what the project is and what the project is not here. I do have some worksheets for download, free downloads. You can download some of these worksheets. I have kind of a basic worksheet and more detailed. These are unprotected Word files. You can go in and adjust those for your environment. And that would be a way for you to get started on doing this. Let's think, if we've got conflict during the project, but it's not quite serious yet. It might be soon, but it isn't quite serious. But I always make sure I well communicate with the affected stakeholders here, understand their viewpoint. A lot of times they may be voicing an opinion in a meeting or in other communications, and it may not be clear why their concern exists. And so understanding their view is real key here, and maybe resolution could happen with that understanding. If more work is needed, considering some compromising situations, if I've got multiple stakeholders with different viewpoints here. I do want to make, as a PM or leadership here, I do want to make these stakeholders aware that if the conflict continues, we're going to have potential impacts to the project. What are those impacts? And of course, I'd be reiterating the importance of the project itself. And if we fail, what that'll do to all of us. Real important bullet at the bottom, that I stay professional. And of course, all of you would know that. I want to make sure that I'm putting the project ahead of, other political interests here, which may be difficult at times, but really working on this in a very professional manner is key here. Let's say it's more serious. Well, the first bullet there is what we did before. We truly want to understand the situation here and work with stakeholders to have everyone understand everyone else's viewpoint here, because there can be a lot of good ideas on both sides here. Again, I would be in talking to these stakeholders, indicating, if we're not able to resolve this, there are some negative effects for everybody here involved. And, indicating that, if we can resolve it, I'm going to have for some help here. Could be the project sponsor, could be my own leadership in either way. If unfortunately that doesn't work out, I certainly am going to talk to my sponsor and leader. Of course, prior to all of this, I've already briefed my sponsor or leadership on what's going on, so they're prepared to think about it and possibly offer some ideas. But as if I'm not able to resolve that conflict, I am going to reach out, and I don't want to be afraid to reach out. Some people might look that shows weakness. Really, of course, the truth is, if I had a PM working for me and they reached out for my help, I'm saying this person is the kind of person I want to be a project manager, because they understand when things are beyond their sphere of influence, that they do need to reach out, and I would be impressed with that.
Say, Mark, I actually have a couple of questions.
Sure.
So one of the things you showed there was that you would talk to all the stakeholders involved if it was serious. Yep. Would you do that as bring them together as a group, or would you be talking to them one-on-one, or a combination of that?
Well, it would be a combination. I really want to talk to people individually to start with, because I'm going to hear things I'm not going to hear in a group session, and they can, let me know what they think. And then if the situation presented itself where we would benefit from a group meeting, by all means. But usually what I want to do is understand their viewpoint, maybe socialize some potential compromise situations, get their take on that, do that individually, and then bring the group together and see what we can do. So that's typically what I'd like to do there.
Thank you. And then my follow-up question, or a different question, I guess. You said one of the best things to do is to be proactive and make sure all the stakeholders are on board at the start of the project. One of my most common things that happens to me now is so many businesses are experiencing turnover. So the chances of getting from the beginning of the project to the end of the project with the same set of stakeholders is slim. So a new stakeholder comes on board. I just had this morning. Somebody said, hey, this proposal looks great. We're ready to move forward and make it a project. But by the way, I'm retiring in November and somebody else will be taking over. So what's your advice when the original stakeholders agree and you move forward on a project, and then a new stakeholder, somebody leaves and you suddenly got a new stakeholder?
Well, I guess I'm going to be careful here, of course. But I am going to take the position that the project is as defined in the charter, and that's the direction we're heading. And if it turns out that direction is really at odds with the needs of the new stakeholder, I mean, we're going to have to work on that. But I guess initially I would take the position that the project is what it is. And if we start changing course at this point, we're going to have undoubtedly cost and schedule impacts and maybe some quality impacts as well. And and see if that flies. If that doesn't fly and the person is adamant that some changes are needed, we'll talk about that. And I do have a topic coming up here on managing changes as well.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for great questions. Okay, we're inheriting a troubled project. What should we be doing here? This is an important thing. I've run into this. I'm sure many of you have as well. Current project's in trouble, and the current project manager is maybe leaving, or the current project manager just isn't able up to the task, and you've been asked to step in here. Well, there's a process for handling this, and just let's take a look at some of the steps. The first step would be, I would be talking to my sponsor, leadership, whoever is appropriate here, and set their expectations. And part of that is I'm not making any commitments on anything right now because I'm just learning about the project. And so I want to make sure that I'm given some time. I will indicate that I need some time to learn about the project and issues and to formulate some effective resolution means here. And then that I will be reporting back. I will be reporting back on multiple occasions soon with what I'm finding. Then I'm also talking to the team here and want to see what their thoughts are. I also want to tell them that I want to do the right thing for all parties here. We're not making any changes right now. We do want to do the right thing and kind of set their minds at ease that, we're going to be careful with this. Second thing I would be doing is doing lots of listening, very little talking, and not making any changes, as I just mentioned. You can see some of the top bullets of what I'm not going to do because I need to learn here. I need to understand what the truth is. I need to understand where the project's at and so on. You can see some of the bullets toward the bottom there. So there's going to be some real learning needed by myself. And I'll be talking to a lot of people. I'll be looking at the project information. I'll be talking to the team members individually, typically. I'm going to be talking to leadership. What do they think? Do they understand what the problem is? Do they have any solutions? I'm not committing to those at the time, but I would want their input as well. So a lot of listening and not too much talking on my part here. Step 3 is to go back and understand what was the original intent of the project in the first place. Some projects get started off in the wrong direction. Somebody pulls a solution right out of the air that sounds great, but may not be the right thing. So I want to go back and understand what was the original need. Are we solving a problem here? Are we making an improvement? Is this a new product or service we're defining, or what is the project and why are we doing it? I'd want to go back to my leadership and just make sure that what I understand to be the original intent of the project really is what leadership's view as well. Step 4, I'd be going back. Every problem has root causes. I need to make sure that whatever the solution that's been identified meets the real root causes. If it's an improvement, there's going to be a bunch of drivers, just like root drivers, if you will. I want to understand what those are. And so I'm going back and I'm really doing I'm doing this quickly. I don't have a lot of time. And I'm going to be talking to as many people as I can in this process, but I need to understand what was the original intent, and is the solution that's being formulated here, is this something that really is addressing the root causes or improvement root drivers? Step 5 would be to update the charter. Chances are things are going to change. If the charter's in great shape, okay, we're good. If the charter needs adjustment, I'm going to do that. I'm going to distribute that to stakeholders and make sure that we're all on the same page. If there isn't any charter, I'm going to generate one, and I'm going to once again distribute that. Step 6, I have to have requirements for what I'm going to deliver. if a contractor is going to build a new house, they need a list of requirements. They need some house drawings of what the client wants. So projects are no different. Projects are going to deliver something. And so we need an understanding of what we're going to deliver here, what requirements. So I'm going to be looking at the requirements that have been defined for the deliverable, and making sure that those are consistent with some of the foregoing work we've done. If there aren't any requirements, I may have found the root cause of why things are in trouble. We're going to generate that and of course review that with appropriate stakeholders. And then what we're going to deliver, that needs to be defined. And we want to make sure that that's aligned with all the prior steps that we've identified here. I might make a quick comment here. I'm talking about a medium or large project here on this recovery effort. If you're working on a small project, there's only 5 people, we're just going to go off in a room and brainstorm all this stuff, and we're going to figure it out. And but really the more structured steps that I'm identifying here are for larger complex projects that might have many facets to it and really need some time and some thought to make sure that the recovery effort just doesn't put the project back in another failed path, that we actually do affect the recovery here. Step 8 would be to do a replan. So what work is needed, who's going to do it, what's the schedule, so on and so on. There's a lot of things the prior steps have changed a lot. Step 9 would be have stakeholders review what we've done, a new charter, new requirements, the plan itself, get input from them. And then of course I would be working with my leadership to I'll be briefing my leadership as we go here, but I'd want to make sure that what we come up with here is aligned with their thinking as well.
Before you move on, Mark.
Yes.
Oh, you can stay on the slide. That works. So a question has come in. I think we didn't set this expectation at the beginning, but I believe we're talking about a traditional waterfall project, point A to point B. But somebody has asked, like, would these same 10 steps work if you were on an agile project? So their specific question is, when you talk about requirements, can you talk a bit about that from an agile point of view? Would these same steps work if you're trying to fix a troubled agile project?
Yeah, whether I'm working a waterfall project, an iterative project, a looping project, an agile project, I mean, there's all different kinds of projects. Project management fundamentals apply in all those situations. The difference is how you apply them and at what level within the project work that you apply them. So that, I mean, the general answer would be yes. But in, in many projects, I would be going through these things, maybe I'm going through 4 or 5 of these steps in just a meeting or something. And, this could be done very quickly. So, but these kind of steps really do apply dependent on the, specific model of the project itself. So thanks for that question. So here's the steps. I won't go through those. Kind of looks industrial strength. Like I said, if you're working on a small project, just get in a room and figure this out. But if you're looking at a medium or a large complex project, some kind of structure here really is of value. Okay, customer leadership keeps changing their minds. Okay. I wish I could say, gee, I've never run into that, but of course, they're always changing their minds. So important, changes can destroy a project. I'll tell you a short story here. My background, we did a lot of work with federal agencies. We had a contract with the FAA many years back for hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And back then that was a lot of money. And what would happen is there would be people rotating through, and I guess we kind of touched on this earlier, people rotating through different positions, and they'd be changing their minds on the requirements. And, some requirements changes you can adopt without significant effect on the project itself. Other changes can be showstoppers. So what happened, unfortunately, was with changing personnel and changing views of what this major en route air traffic control system would do, related to related to all those requirements volatility. So unfortunately, the effort did not complete. It's important that all of us PMs and those of us in leadership that have PMs working for us, that we're very sensitive to changes. I think a real key thing here is, when does the change happen? So let me just jump to the bottom of the slide. You'll have a project process that, depending on the project model you use, there will be a project process that you'll be going through. If you, and early on in the project, if you've got some changes, that could be adopted with very little impact. As you go through the project process, whatever the project process would be, I just have one shown here. As you go through that, the longer things go, the more impact a given change will have. And at some point, we may disrupt or even cause the project to fail. So being aware of this and actually communicating this to stakeholders on the front end, let's all make sure we get the requirements document well identified. Otherwise, we're going to, have some turmoil later on. And we want to change those if we need to now, not later on. And so this awareness to people who may not be aware, you may be working with leadership and others, customers that really don't have an understanding of how different development models work. And they may not be aware that changes later on can be disastrous. So that communication on the front end is very important here. Another thing to be aware of is, as a project manager, all those kind of steps those steps that we talked about for saving a troubled project, those are just fundamental project management kinds of steps. And if I change a prior step, that change is going to ripple forward and cause changes in future baselines. As an example, if I change the requirements, that's going to change what I deliver. And if I change what I deliver, that's going to change the plan, and so on and so on. So PMs need to be aware that these changes will have a ripple effect going forward here. If I'm the PM and my leadership or my customer or my sponsor comes to me and says, we want to make this change, the first thing I want to do is very politically carefully is not commit to anything. Maybe that's just silence for a bit. But I will say that what I'd be saying is, I want to work with the team. We want to review the change. We want to see what impacts that will cause for us in resources, budgets, and schedule, if any. And a lot of times, of course, there is going to be impacts. And then I would work with the team to I want to quickly make those estimates. And I got to understand that it is an estimate, but I want to do it quickly. And then I want to get back to the individual that requested that change and say, here's what we've been able to analyze here. If we make this change, here's what happens to the deliverable. Here's what happens to quality. Here's what effects are on needed resources, cost, and schedule. And of course, it may not be real complex, but we do want to make the requester aware of what kind of impact. And if all those impacts are totally acceptable, hey, we're just moving ahead. If all those impacts, cause pause in the requester, then that's something we want to talk about. But I just don't want to go to small changes. Of course, I'll just take care of. But if it's any kind of change that's going to really impact the project work and the project plan, it's something we want to think about a little bit. Another topic here, inadequate role definitions are causing confusions. I'll tell you, this is one of the biggest things I see in public sector, the corporate world, nonprofits, everybody. I don't see much in the way of good role definitions. And if you want to make some improvements in your organization, this is probably one of the things that probably is about the easiest to do. Not easy, but easier than many other things that can have a real impact on organization effectiveness here. So I'm just going to quickly touch on different roles here. Roles of sponsors, roles of stakeholders, role of the project manager, then the accountabilities of individual team members here. So all of these need to be well defined. For the sponsor themselves, I know this is a topic all unto itself. If you use project sponsors, you want to give your project sponsors some guidance on what they're expected to be doing. I've worked with some very large public sector organizations that really had no project sponsor definition. And so sponsors were just doing everything or nothing under the sun. And they weren't really effectively helping projects. So what we did is put together some infrastructure, some guidance for generic guidance for sponsors, and that was of value. If I look at down at the project level, and I look at stakeholders, and let's say I've got a larger complex project, and I've got a number of different stakeholders here. Really on the front end of the project, just like we did the project charter, on the front end, I want some of these defining kinds of agreements on the front end about who's doing what. And so I might put together a table, and the table would be, it's just a cartoon there on the slide, but I mean, what's, for a given stakeholder, whomever that might be, and I just listed off generic names here. You would have your own very specific stakeholder sets. But I would be, what's their role? And their role is just a general role. It's not their accountabilities. It's just generally what's their role in the project. And then we would want to identify accountabilities. Are they delivering something on the project? And what is that? It may be nothing, but it may be significant. And then their decision authority is very key here. What stakeholders have decision authority over what? And if we can get this defined up front, boy, we can eliminate a whole bunch of confusion and chaos later on. Now, this may be politically charged, of course, but that's even more reason to talk about this kind of stuff on the front end and get some level of agreement as we move into the project. So I don't want to make a career out of making tables like this, but I do want to, maybe as a PM or maybe a project sponsor, what I might be doing is drafting up a very high level view of this and socializing that, floating that around to stakeholders, see what their thoughts are, and then working with the stakeholders to complete this and agree to it. So if I can do that, that's going to be of great benefit to us as we move ahead with the project. At the organization level, having a defined role for a project manager is very key here. I mean, everyone might say, well, they're responsible for the project. Well, that's all true, but there's all kinds of ins and outs of that. And if you've got a PMO, project management office in your organization, that's a good thing. This would be a great, if you don't have a defined project manager definition, you might want to consider doing that. You don't want to make things too complex because no one's going to read it, but you do need some basic things written down on what are the accountabilities and responsibilities and authorities for a project manager, so they know and they don't have to dream that up as they go through a project. If you don't have a PMO, maybe a working group could be put together, and I do have some resources on my website that can help with that. At the project level, the PM needs to establish their role and authority for that matter. And, as a PM starting a new project, I want to talk to each team member individually, assuming that's feasible. Or at least maybe it's team leads if it's a large project. I want them to understand what their role is, what their accountabilities are, what decision authorities they have, when decisions need to come to me for discussion. Sometimes I can only define this generically at a high level, but having something out there defined is better than nothing. As I'm doing this, I'm establishing myself as the leader of the project. As the project progresses, of course, I want to be a leader. Communication with the team. I mean, there's a whole list of leadership things. I do have a list coming up here of some things. When you conduct team meetings, I mean, that's establishing your position and authority. letting people do their own work, not micromanaging, of course. There's a list, there's, dozens and dozens of things like this. That very last bullet there, exhibit professional and constructive attitudes and behaviors at all times. People on a project are watching the project manager, and consciously or unconsciously, they're going to replicate that person's behaviors. And if as a PM, I can act in a very professional, ethical, and constructive manner, that's going to, they're going to absorb some of that, like I said, consciously or unconsciously. So very important for me to act in that manner. And when I do that, I do build their respect and puts me in a position of being a leader of the project. I've listed off, I mean, I'm sure you've all gone to leadership training and read all kinds of books and articles and whatever, and there's just dozens and dozens of bullets of very important leadership things to be done. But that first bullet there that I just mentioned, very important to me. I think the other important thing here is, when I work for someone and I can see that that person is putting the customer and the organization and the team ahead of themselves, I respect that person. I'm willing to follow that person. If I see someone that is putting their own career as the first top 3 priorities in life, that's a very different situation for me. And so being a person that is clearly putting the customer and organization and team ahead of my own personal interest, I think is a critical aspect of being a good leader. People will respect you for that. You can scan some of these others. These are all very important. I think the one down toward the bottom here demonstrates ethical behavior and requires the same as the team. Boy, I've seen that be extremely important in some of the projects I've worked on. Role definitions. I do have some starter definitions on the website. You can download those for free. They're all unprotected Word files. You can rewrite them and use them for your own efforts. If you want some support on that, Beth is able to find consulting work to help you with some of these. Okay, project team member accountabilities. So here's kind of a cartoon of planning a project. We've got some information here like the requirements for the deliverable and a project charter. And then we've got a deliverable definition, what we're going to build, like the house plans. Then we put together a WBS, a work outline, eventually schedules, resource needs, budgets, org, and accountabilities. So this is all PM 101. And so I'm sure all of you know this, but really the accountabilities are a direct, specific accountabilities on a project, are direct output from the plan. So if I've got a great plan, good accountabilities, I've done my job, and every team member should know what are they accountable for. If I don't have a good plan and these accountabilities are high level or vague or maybe even absent, now I'm in trouble because everyone on the team should know, what are they accountable for on the project. Okay, so there's some resources out there for you. We talked about defining the role of the sponsor, the role of the project manager, how to handle stakeholders, and then of course the planning with the project team is very key here. Okay, there's limited resources as there are many projects. That's an important thing. Just about all organizations I've worked in or consulted with certainly have resource issues. So there's no magic wand here, but there are some things that I can do as a PM and leadership to try and lessen the negative impacts of, a limited resource situation in projects. First thing I want to do is I say on the slide, have a good plan. I would say have a great plan. If I don't have a plan for the project as a project manager, I don't have any basis for really understanding or arguing what kind of resources I need for the project. If I have a decent plan, that's going to allow me to communicate to those that manage resources what I need. One thing that is important, if I'm a resource manager and I've got project managers coming to me for different different resource needs. And I've got a person over here, and they're a great planner. When they need a resource, I know it's quite possible. That's a good need. Or if I have a person over here and they don't do a very good job of planning, or maybe they have almost no plan, and they are asking for resource needs, that's going to be that person is going to be a whole bunch less credible in my viewpoint. So if I look at myself as a PM, what I want to be I want to be known as a good planner, a great planner, so that when I ask for resources, that is probably a very valid need there. The other thing could be done at the organization level, is last bullet here, is that some organizations are loath to prioritize projects, like every project's important. Well, okay, that's a thought. But I think that at some point in time, with limited resources, let's say I've got a PMO that does resource allocation, or I have a resource management person or group. At some point in time, they're going to need some kind of project priority scheme that would help them identify what resources go where. So if you have that, great. If you don't have that, that might be a part of the overall solution here. So those would be proactive things to consider. Reactive, obviously, if I'm a project manager and don't have the right resources, it's my role to go off and do that. And that's part of being a project manager. But I do want to make sure that my leadership is aware of those. I don't want to be a complainer, but I want to make sure that I am offering information in an appropriate manner, in an appropriate time frame of what resource shortcomings I have. And I want to communicate also the negative impacts of that. I can say I'm short resources, but what does that mean? What are the negative impacts to that? To quality, schedule, my budgets, customer satisfaction. A lot of times that will help those that manage resources to look at your need more definitively. The other thing I want to do is I want to never stop working. I got to grow up. I don't want to be a person that's just, well, gee, that's no resources here. Obviously, I want to maintain a very professional attitude, keep working despite what shortcomings exist, and do what I can to resolve those. Stakeholders see technology as the root of all project success.
So Mark, before you move on, I'm just going to
Yeah.
say that we have about 5 minutes left.
Yeah.
So that will help you plan your time. And if folks have questions that they've got, couple of minutes yet to get those submitted. And it does look like I can unmute you. It's hard for me to see raised hands. So just put I have a question in the chat, and I can unmute someone if they prefer to ask rather than type. And all right, away you go, Mark.
Yeah, thanks, Beth. Actually, this is the last topic here. And I really, the fun part for me, as I said when I started, is the question. So I look forward to any questions you might have. Okay, our last topic here, stakeholders see technology as the answer to project success. I can't tell you how many times I've been talking to a vice president, a president, a CEO, very important people in very large organizations, public sector as well. And, one example would be, I had one person tell me, boy, if we can just get this new resource allocation system that we purchased for a lot of money, if we can just get that working, we're going to be in great shape here. And other people will say, if we could just get this shrink wrapped scheduling tool up and running, we're going to be, our projects will be running much better. And of course, other people have other ideas. The truth is there's a wide spectrum of infrastructure elements that are needed that all have to work collectively to make an organization function effectively. And so, some of those are here. The organization needs some kind of structure. They probably have that. How about role definitions? We talked about that. That's a key part of your infrastructure. Some type of operating model. I'll say a little bit about that. We do need some processes. I don't need overbearing processes that are too complex. On the other side, I don't need simplistic processes that are only a page or two long that don't say anything. So somehow I have to find the sweet spot between the two. Overburdening processes no one's going to read. They may be too narrow in their focus. And like I said, processes that are too non-substantive don't offer enough direction. Learning's a big thing. Tools in the form of checklists and templates and guides and things like that are very important. Experts they're the go-to person for questions. And maybe you've got a project planning expert. Maybe you have a risk management effort. Maybe you got a subcontractor management kind of expert. So organization with people I can go to ask questions, very important. And you can see some of the others here. Technology, of course, is one. Technology is very important. Without technology, a whole bunch of stuff we do in organizations we couldn't do. But it's one of many infrastructure elements. If I were to show a picture of how these things fit together, it would be something like this. Let's say that I'm starting off on a brand new organization, whatever that might be. I need some kind of operating model. I don't need anything complex. It might be one sheet of paper, but what are the parts of the organization? What kind of work did they do? What's the general flow of work through the organization? Or maybe it's another diagram of another type. Organization needs some kind of structure, not overbearing, but some structure. Organization needs some defined roles. We talked about that. I also need some processes, not complex processes, not super simple processes. I need common sense guidance for the work that my organization does. And then those processes are going to drive the technology I need, not vice versa. A lot of times it is vice versa because you buy off the shelf stuff or kind of off the shelf stuff. But really overall, you may buy off the shelf stuff, but overall the configuration of that technology really needs to be driven by what infrastructure you have in place. Learning is very key here. That could be training. That could be a short guide, a 3-page guide on doing something, very key here. And then what I found in my work with organizations and putting together, infrastructure, things like this is, you could have all the stuff above. You could have good items up here. You could have good processes, great technology. You could bring everyone to class, and then it's not enough. And what happens is here, people will run into real world things that the processes and some of the other infrastructure elements don't address, and then they don't know what to do. So you really need these experts, acknowledged experts in the organization to help. And I found that to be very key. And then the other thing you need are some web-based or based anything, but web-based kind of tools, a template for a project plan, a checklist for risk management, maybe a guide on performing supplier management as an example. Those kind of web-based tools. And actually what my website is maybe 100 kinds of things like this that can support projects. But this process implementation and support is very key. Having good processes and good training, I have found not to be enough. Then of course we have to measure ourselves and use that to improve this infrastructure. So when I talk to organizations about they want this new shrink wrap tool, or I'm going to add this technology, or I'm going to run I'm going to add some checklists or templates and that's going to answer everything. Those are all great things to do. And by all means do that. But they are, that's not the totality. I need this full set of infrastructure elements here to actually make things work. So there we are, kind of quick topics here. We talked about stakeholder differences and whatever. And we talked about a key part there is a project charter. And there's other things we talked about. We talked about taking over a trouble project and because kind of some steps. We talked about changes impacting projects, what to do there. Role definitions, like I said before, if you don't have good role definitions in your organization, that's something that's very simple. And that's things that Beth and I could help you with if you'd want. What to do with limited resources, and then the overall infrastructure of an organization and how technology and other aspects of that infrastructure fit together here. So with that, there's my website, manageprojectsbetter.com, and all the stuff is free. And look forward to and please use whatever. It's all free. So Beth, that's what I've got here.
Oh, good. I do have a question, but it doesn't require your slide deck. So I'll have you stop sharing and then I will start sharing again.
Okay.
I will say, I appreciate that. I feel like when I attend things like this, you always said things like, oh yeah, I used to do that. I've forgotten what I know. And so it's good reminders on what you've learned in the past. And one thing that really resonated with me was your impact chart. I don't think I've seen it laid out that way before. That changes, the longer the project goes, the more expensive the changes become. I don't think I've seen that before. It's something I know, but to share that with stakeholders as a way to manage their expectations, that's probably my favorite takeaway. I always warn people when they work with me to collaborate on a project in the beginning. I ask a ton of questions, and I always say, if I'm asking you a bunch of questions, it's because I'm interested in the project, and I like to get all those things out in the low impact stage. So, all right, I'm going to share my screen again, and then we'll get to the last couple of questions. Somebody asked about the slide deck. We don't make slide decks available for our free webinars, but again, the recording will be posted in a couple of weeks on our website. So you can take a look on our website. Past webinars are up here on free online training. This is a still shot of the website, so I can't click on it, but that's where you can go to find Mark's recording for today. And just a reminder, Mark mentioned a couple of trainings. They're not specifically mentioned, but the sponsor training maybe is something that your organization could need. That's something he does. And I also think, even especially for those of you who've had training from Metro State and Mark, is this training, but we would talk to you and Mark would find out what are your organization's biggest issues. And we would customize this training to do good reminders for you. Like, is it defining roles? And then not just say you should define roles, but Mark would come with all his tools and facilitate the discussions. And so think about how you can use Mark and his knowledge in that way. The one interesting question here, Mark, is if somebody is searching to become a project manager and interviewing, what's, in your experience, what's kind of the one big question they can expect to be asked in an interview session for a project manager?
Well, there isn't one question. You'll be asked a lot of different questions. And actually, I have a resource on my website that is useful for both individuals who are hiring project managers and also for individuals that are interviewing for a project manager position. And what I've done there is I've outlined common questions that would be asked for an interview. And, and then from the interviewer standpoint, what would be some good responses to those questions? And so I can't think of any one question, but there's just a lot of questions. And, different organizations have a different focus on that. But I do have that PM interview resource. It's probably 15 pages long and has quite a few questions and answers on it.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to ask kind of a follow-up to that, which is, I've always been taught for interview situations, you don't really pay that much attention to the questions. You think about what you want to convey and you spin. Yeah. So another angle on this is, if you wanted to convey like 2 qualities that you have that make you a good project manager, what do you think are like the most important 2 qualities in a project manager?
Well, clearly leadership. I would want to be explaining my thoughts on leadership and my experience in the past on leading efforts, large or small. And then a real big part of and leadership, would encompass all the people, necessary people. The other topic would be my organizing skills, because a whole bunch of being a project manager is requirements and charters and plans and going through all those details. So being detail oriented and being an organizer and structuring kind of person, those are some essential core skills that a project manager should have. And so I would be emphasizing those.
All right, thank you. I don't see any more questions, and you can see that I flipped to our last slide here, which is next month, August. We are partnering with the Department of Human Services from the state of Minnesota to start a 3-part series on business architecture 201. And the series will occur August, every other month. So August, October, and December. So you can look for that on our website. And Mark, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for a very informative session. And we will be sending out, once the recording's posted, we'll make sure we get that link sent out to the people who registered for the webinar. And we're over time, so I'm just going to say thank you very much. And thank everybody for joining us today.
Yes. No, thank you.